So let's call to order the City of Milton Virtual Common Council meeting, Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 at 6:04 p.m. And can I get confirmation of appropriate meeting notices?
The agenda was posted at Dave's Ace Hardware, Piggly Wiggly, and Milton City Hall.
And was it available online and other social media avenues?
Correct.
Item number 2, approval of agenda.
I move for approval.
Larry is moving for approval. Linda Clark is seconding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, and we have an agenda. Pledge of Allegiance. So those of you that are new to Zoom counseling, I will move my computer so you all can see the flag behind me. And I think the new dad, there a new dad here? Oh, there is a new dad here. Ryan Holbrook, if you would be so honored in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
2 meetings in a row. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval, public comments regarding items which can be affected by council agenda. So I know we have members of the public here, and if you are waiting for the public hearing on different items, then you can speak at the public hearing when that agenda item comes up. And then is there anybody here that is on the call that would like to speak to something that is on the agenda, but not a public hearing? Okay. When we get to the public hearing portion of the meeting, when it's your turn to speak, we ask that you give us your first, your last name, and your address. And I'll repeat that when we get to that portion. Item number 5, approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Linda Clark has motioned and Teresa Roosh has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Item number 6, public hearing, discussion, and possible action and final resolutions 2020-20 regarding assessments for the sanitary sewer main installation along North Janesville Street. So how public hearings work is that staff member will typically talk about the agenda item, and then the mayor will open the public hearing. And then Inga is our Zoom organizer for the meeting, and she will call on individuals to speak that want to speak on this item for the public hearing. And typically we'll have about 3 minutes for each person. Sometimes it goes a little bit longer. I also know that there is a couple that would like to combine their minutes and have one or the other person speak for 6 minutes. It's fine. The other process or procedural item is that it is a public meeting, and we like to be respectful and kind and compassionate to each other. And sometimes an item means a lot to somebody, and they have strong feelings about it, and we understand that. We would just ask that everybody remains respectful. And we usually do a pretty good job at public hearings, and I really appreciate all the residents with the city of Milton who are active and engaged and participate in public hearings. So, Al, Mark, Howie, whoever wants to go from here, I will hand it over to you.
Sure, I can kind of kick it off, and then Mark and Howie can jump in as they see fit. This is an item regarding the sanitary sewer assessment for the sanitary sewer project that involves the extension of sanitary sewer along North Janesville Street. As a way of background, I know the council's talked about this a couple of times. We received notice from a home along North Janesville Street that had failed a septic inspection. The home was up for sale, and originally the original property owner wanted to have that situation remedied. He has since sold the property with the understanding that the new property owner would be involved with the remedy of the situation. Council, we brought this to the council back in May when we first became aware of it and discussed the scope of the project. At the time, we knew we had two options really. We could extend just to that property, or we could extend beyond that property and hopefully recognize some economies of scale with extending that sanitary sewer along North Janesville Street to the edge of the city limits, which is typically our customary practice. Once we got through that process and received kind of estimates from our engineer, the council discussed those options again. And each one of these steps is kind of outlined in the memo that Howie prepared. At the time, the council said, well, let's go receive bids for both projects. We received bids for both projects. Council discussed those bids and ultimately decided to move forward with the extension all the way to the city limits, as opposed to stopping just at the affected property. The council then approved the bid award to the low bidder, and the assessment process then began. Assessments were then computed based on the linear footage for each property. Notices were sent to the property owners of their proposed assessment, and the public hearing was scheduled for this evening. So we have folks on the call that have contacted the council and members of staff, and those correspondences have been forwarded on to the council for their awareness. And unless there's anything that I'm kind of missing in the process, Mark or Howie can jump in. But that's where we are at in the project process, is we're at the assessment public hearing phase. Howie, Mark, anything you want to add? Oh, Howie, you're muted.
No, that sounds all right. That sounds correct.
Mark, you're good? Okay. So now we're to the portion where I will open the public hearing for comments. And so how this works is individuals, as we had talked about, have an opportunity to share their thoughts and feelings with the council. And it's the council's job to listen. And there isn't a conversation that takes place. The council just listens. You certainly can ask questions of the council, and they can write those questions down. And staff can answer those questions when it's their turn to talk and the council's turn to talk. So we are ready to start, and I will just go ahead and have Inga identify who our first speaker will be.
So I'm just going to go based on who I'm seeing on my screen, and the first person up would be Pat Murphy.
Thank you. I am Patricia Murphy, and I live at 927 Bowers Lake Road in Milton. I own the property at 367 North Janesville Street. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And also thank you for your service on the council. I know it's not an easy job and I appreciate what you do. I wish this could have been done in person rather than Zoom. I understand the situation, but I do wish it would have been able to have been scheduled for in person. The section of North Janesville Street we're talking about tonight was annexed into the city many years ago. I tried to get the exact year today, but Inga was not able to find that for me. But I'm told that it's maybe decades since it's been a part of the city. I understand from watching the videos that you have become aware of this situation at 331 North Janesville Street since April 29th. Also, we, as the homeowners that are most affected by this property or by this project, were notified on July 11th. I was very disappointed in that. That felt like we were being shut out from the process. And I say that because my son Lucas, throughout most of May and all of June, was trying to be a part of the process, trying to get questions answered and have information to move forward from our side of the project. So in the May 5th meeting, Teresa mentioned that this project has been talked about before, and she asked, why hasn't it been done already? And Howard responded that we didn't have any requests for it then. So now what we have is an emergency. And with an emergency comes extra cost. But is it really an emergency? I say that because in many conversations and in written materials that I've read, the terms failing and failed are used interchangeably. They have very different meanings, and they are not interchangeable. It is my understanding that the septic at 331 North Janesville Street is failing, but it has not failed, which means it's not an emergency from my point of view. At the May 5th meeting, Larry, wherever you are, Larry, thank you. Larry said, he stressed to let the homeowners be given as much notice as possible and not spring this on them. But I don't think anyone listened to Larry because we were not brought into the loop until the last possible moment. According to your videos, the cost is much higher than you estimated. At the May 19th meeting, when Dan was asked, can the city manage this cost? Dan said, quote, if the bid doesn't come in super crazy, if it comes in at the 200,000 to 230,000 range, unquote. So here we are with a super crazy bid. Mark E. said the reasons for the high bids are a late bidding schedule combined with a completion date of fall of 2020. My late husband used to say, poor planning on their part does not necessitate an emergency on my part. But what has been done here is we've created a scenario where it is almost an emergency. You mentioned earlier, Al, that you had 2 options, but actually in May you discussed 3 options. And the third one was that you could allow the homeowner at 331 to put in a new septic at a cost of approximately $7,000. Now that $7,000 would be a much lower price than what this so-called emergency project is going to incur. It has said that city water and sewer increases the value of a property. And I totally agree with that, it does. In this case, this assessment is so high that it will negate that increase in value, plus take away some of the equity that these property owners have if they choose to sell. I feel the assessment is very unreasonable. I'm told that at a subdivision, the rate is about 50 to 60 feet per, $50 to $60 per foot, and we're at over $200 per foot. That it's actually $209.50 per foot. In your mission, you state that you try to provide services for the residents at a fair price. That's not a quote, but I just don't feel that that's what's being done here. This just isn't cost effective. The stretch between Nelson Road, like I think it's 140 feet north of Nelson Road, on the east side is not accessible to that property owner. And I understand that, I get that. But why is that our assessment? Why is that cost incurred to us rather than the city absorbing that cost? And in Howard's memo dated today, under analysis, he says, the installation of the sewer along North Janesville Street comprises 940 and would serve not only the property that has a failing septic, but would serve an additional 10 lots and make sewer available to undeveloped lands to the north if development occurs at some point in the future. Now that begs the question, are we, these 8 homeowners, paying for the service to this undeveloped land? Makes me wonder. So I ask that you give this further discussion, and to quote Dan at one of your meetings, you've already discussed it ad nausea. Please discuss it more. I think that it deserves much more than what has been given so far. I realize you have the Wisconsin statutes and the police power to protect you with whatever decision you make, but I ask you to think of this question. Is this ethical? What you're doing, is this ethical? It's not to me or to the other homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And just a reminder, 3 minutes as close to possible. And I'm trying to be really fair and not cut anybody off in the middle of their thoughts. Thanks. Inga?
Okay, so the next person I'm seeing is Chuck Nelson. You just need to unmute yourself. Yep, you got it.
Hi, I'm Chuck Nelson, live at 340 North Janesville Street. And I'd like to say thank you for hearing our thoughts and our concerns. Thank you, Pat. You covered a lot of the topic that I would like to discuss too. And I completely agree with Pat's thoughts. And I hope you take that into deep consideration, because I believe talking to our other neighbors, they all feel very similar to Pat. So I'd like you to look at that. I will skip the sections that Pat already covered to keep it short. Mine, I would like to kind of bring around a little bit more the financial side of it. Me personally, it will affect me with this assessment of roughly $65,000. So let's break that down, because I have 3 lots. Let's just take the simple lot that I have that is a standard city lot of 99 feet. The first one that is hit. That is $20,741.23 assessed to that lot. That lot is not fair market valued at that. And I would ask you to think about this, that does my property value really increase by $20,000? The other part of the financial that we need to think about is, we, as the same group, 4 years ago, came up with this same situation when the city needed to improve their water line. It was not the residents that had a need for it. It was the city's need for it, due to, my personal opinion, a mistake in engineering design. Not anybody from the city, but it was designed. It caused a problem, which was brought up in the May 5th meeting. It affected the condos on Bowers Lake Road, and also there was concerns that they needed to close a loop to better support the subdivision that starts off in Nelson Avenue. because that's where the water feed was. If you look at my lot with those two assessments together, I'm at close to $30,000. If this goes through, that we eat the full price. When I bring that up, I bring it up because there is a financial hardship I feel going to all of us that are affected in this. And I truly believe that your main intent here is to extend a sewer line, which is great. I think the city needs to improve their abilities for future growth, and I think that's great. I don't feel that that should be put on the burden financially of 8 residents of the city of Milton. And I agree with Pat, you know, a normal subdivision would be $55 to $60 a foot, not $200 and almost $10 a foot. I feel that when you look at what the assessment should be against us as property owners, we should have the ability to pay what would be normal or would be fair value, not have to burden the cost of the future expansions. So, and as the original sewer that was brought down North Janesville Street in 1978 by my father, it was paid for, and none of the city residents had to pay for that improvement. It was paid by the developer. Just like, in my mind, the city right now is the developer of this project, and it's for future development. So in fairness, if there's an assessment to go against our properties, I feel that I would like you to take deep consideration in what is the fair assessment value to us as residents when it affects 8 or 10 total properties on this project, but the future could be 1,000. It could be whatever it could be. The pipe is being put in to handle future expansion. So those are my concerns. I feel that I would really appreciate you taking hard consideration in how these assessments are put against our properties. It does put us in financial burden. If I was to have to connect to the water and sewer, I owe $94,000. And I ask any of you if you have an extra $94,000 laying around, because I don't. And I know that I cannot get that out of the sale of my property. That will be money that's just lost. So my property really, I feel, is being devalued right now at what we're being assessed, not being an improvement. I'd love it to be an improvement, but I can't find that anywhere in fair market value that that lot would sell for that kind of price. So I think that really covers the main thing. And again, looking at fair assessment value, size of the pipe, the depth it's going, the property, as Pat mentioned, is being assessed to us. Those are all things I think you need to look at what the cost should be assessed to our property owners. And keep in mind, that just gives us the right to connect to that pipe. It does not cover the cost to connect to the pipe. So my 94 goes up extremely more than that. So I ask you to take that into serious consideration, that this is putting a very serious financial burden on all the residents affected. All my neighbors reside the same way. We've had a discussion on it. It affects them the same way it affects me financially. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So the next person I am seeing on the screen is Lucas Murphy.
Hello, I am Lucas Murphy and I live at 362 North Janesville Street. I've got about 25 hours of research in this, and I've got it down to about 4 minutes, so hopefully that's acceptable.
All right, thanks. Good luck.
According to the statute 66.07031B, if an assessment represents an exercise of police power, the assessment shall be upon a reasonable basis as determined by the governing body of the city, town, or village. From my research, the only limit the statute puts on a municipality is the assessment must be made in a reasonable manner. According to a summary of special assessment law in Wisconsin that Marquette Law published, although the police power requirement relating to benefits is much more liberal than that of the taxing power, this cannot be construed to mean that municipal governing bodies have complete discretion to ignore the question of benefits conferred. Marquette Law goes on to say, after the cost of the project and the amount to be assessed has been determined, the next step is to apportion the cost of the project to the property benefited in a fair and equitable manner. This is where I feel the proposed assessment is not in agreement with the terms reasonable basis. After reviewing over 20 court cases on special assessments, it became clear that if part of the project is designed for the benefit of the public or other users, it should not be assessed to the adjacent property owners of that project. My first example is the pipe size. The project for North Janesville Street is using 10-inch pipe, which is oversized for a residential neighborhood. Nelson Avenue subdivision uses 8-inch pipe, which would be considered standard. While I understand the city's reason for the larger pipe size, since our street would justify a collector main, the additional cost should not be assessed to our block. Marquette Law states, property abutting the large collector line may hook up directly and should therefore be assessed the equivalent of an 8-inch main on a front foot basis. The next example, the assessment is not reasonable, is due to the depth of the sewer pipe. The project is putting the pipe 25 feet below the road surface. This would be extremely deep for a residential subdivision. I spoke with Mike Shoemaker of BKS Construction, who has granted the contract for the sewer main, about the depth. He explained this is one of the main reasons for the high cost of the project. He is currently installing sewer in a new subdivision at a cost of $55 a foot. If you take the value, or if you take his bid and you divide it by 944 point something feet, that comes out to $353.03 per foot, excluding the engineering costs. The issue is the road is too expensive to remove, being a former state highway, so it becomes a logistical challenge to dig a hole 25 feet deep and 8 foot wide. The Marquette Law summary has an example scenario they go in depth on, and it states, assuming that some of the mains are installed in an extraordinary depth in order to serve future development, this portion of the cost should be assigned to the area benefited. It has been abundantly clear in the memos and city council meetings that one of the main reasons to install the sewer main is to allow for future expansion in the city. If the project was only to meet the needs of our block, the mains would be installed at a significantly higher elevation, but the city isn't installing a residential main. They are installing a collector main that will benefit future city residents. The residents of North Janesville Street are not the area benefited from the 25-foot depth of the project. Marquette Law goes on to state, the objective throughout the process of determining the assessment formula is to equitably spread the cost of the project among the benefited properties. While the municipality should attempt to maintain consistency from project to project, old formulas should not be followed blindly. Each new project may involve special situations requiring new approaches. Our block is a textbook definition of a situation requiring a new approach. A reasonable approach would be to take the added cost of the larger pipe and extreme depth and assess these additional costs of the project using an area assessment method assigned to the future developable properties, like is being done for the lift station assessment that will be discussed after this. If the city is unable to make this assessment, then the city needs to cover the costs, as assigning them to the residents of our block would not be considered reasonable during an appeal. In conclusion, the proposed assessment for the sewer main on North Janesville Street is a cookie cutter approach for a modern subdivision that does not provide reasonable grounds for a 100% assessment of the sewer main to the residents of our block. The proposed assessment is unethical and has not been made on a reasonable basis, and therefore I question the legality of the current proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Inga?
Okay, so Stu Ellison, I assume you're here for the chickens and the bees again, right? Stu, are you there?
Yep, yes.
Okay. Sounds good. And then Jody Hay, you're on my screen too, but I think you're here for a future agenda item. I need to, and then Tim Lindau, are you here for this agenda item? No?
He's likely here for the next one.
Okay. Joshua Brunk. You're muted right now.
Hello?
Oh, hi.
Hello. Joshua Brum, 382 North Season Street. Kind of sprinkle some more in to what my neighbors contributed here. And I did quite a few research. I drew a lot from publication and special assessments by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. And it reinforces a lot of what my fellow neighbors here are pushing for, and really the benefits used in assessments of this nature, special assessments under police power, really have to show in general that the benefits are to the property themselves. And going back through a lot of the discussion in prior meetings about this sewer line, it seems even back in 2019, discussions on moving forward with Milton, looking at the progression map, that this really is benefiting not only the city of Milton for expansion, as well as future investors in properties that may or may not be acquired at some point in time in the future. And really, special assessments assigned under a police power really have to drive that point home, and that our properties specifically are benefiting from this. We're right next to Luke. We're raising children in our properties here. It's a nice community. The neighbors are great here. And really, they've spoken a lot already. So, just to drive home financial burden on me and my wife. My wife is a healthcare worker. I'm an engineer in manufacturing. And even with those professions, as hard as we work, as long hours as we work, the cost of $49,000 against our property is extremely high. It's quite shocking actually. Not really what we were expecting. I think we've been here for 9 years now. Our kids turn from toddlers to teenagers. The schools are great here. We really have no intention on moving anytime soon, but just having that weight on families dealing with a lot right now, everybody is, with homeschooling, how to do that. This whole situation compounding on here also puts a lot of pressure on families on this side of the community. It forced a lot of us in this community to stop what we were doing, stop projects we were working on, and hunker down and read a lot of publications, state statutes. It really was a disruption in and of itself. I did have the engineer out here asking me if he could cut down a 100-year-old maple in my yard to make it cheaper. One of the reasons we moved out on this side of town was because it's quite beautiful out here. People drive down here. It really adds to part of Milton that there's these small portions of towns that have a lot of trees, a lot of yard plants, and based on goals set forth for community development of Milton, part of what you guys are expecting in the next 5 years is to retain some of the beauty of Milton and this community, this side of town, with the golf course and our vast lots and our trees. There's a lot of wildlife here. We really would be a just benefit to tear things up down here. And I think the rest of the neighbors have done a great job of collecting a lot of this information. A lot of the stuff I also read. So I think that's all I got.
Thank you. Inga?
Okay, so next I have Katie Murphy. And Katie, you're muted, so you just need to unmute yourself. So we'll come back to Katie. And the next person I have is Frank Highland.
Hello there.
Hi, Frank.
Thank you for the Thank you for this opportunity to contribute. I'm Frank Highland. My wife Joanne and I are the co-owners and residents of the 3371 North Janesville Street property. We too had big questions and concerns about this proposed special assessments for the new North Janesville Street sanitary project. First, we firmly believe that the enormous magnitude of the assessment estimates, not just for us, but for all of the affected properties, is beyond preposterous. It's not just opinion, but we know that far more economical and practical options are available for what is no more than a perceived and undefined Milton issue. And that those other options are every bit as technically, feasibly, and legally sound, both now and for the foreseeable future, than what's been pursued so far. Just as importantly, the tiny amount of time, limited information, few specific notifications, and few publicly published review opportunities we've been given to consider the assessment estimates, the project design itself, plus the overall project legality and several more aspects of it, are all woefully inadequate. Equally important, perhaps more so, we have serious doubts that what the Common Council intends to do has any, quote, reasonable basis, unquote, whatsoever that categorically justifies imposing special assessment burdens on us or any other affected property owners. For example, I'm from a technical background, and solely in that regard, I definitely need to learn much more about how the technical necessity was established and supported for a project of this scope and magnitude. Indeed, I have many questions in this area alone, and each of them deserves your specific answers. But since the time I've had to formulate them and have to ask them now is highly restricted, I'll only pose one here. That is, exactly what and where has it been quantified and documented that there is any significant hazard risk to us, the other affected property owners and residents, or Milton at large exists now or could credibly and imminently occur in the future due to any postulated worst-case septic system deficiency or failure. To put it more or less elaborately, the same question is, what is the actual environmental, safety, and or health danger if something clearly negative happens to one or more of our septic systems? With all due respect, Director Robinson's report on this subject doesn't answer our question if it addresses it at all. Faulty opinions and antiseptic negative attitudes of some council members displayed in your YouTube videos don't help the case either. Before you respond, know that I neither seek nor want an answer to that question now, or verbally at all. It deserves and demands a written and published answer. We all know it'll take you time to provide the answer that way, just as we all know that more time will be required to process the rest of my questions, technical or beyond. Nothing I've said yet deals with what draft resolution number 2020-20 asserts. Quote, benefits conferred on such property by said improvements, unquote. What such benefits are haven't been delineated anywhere that we can find. As we see it, a, quote, reasonable basis, unquote, for making any special assessment requires not only necessity, true urgency that's now absent, and specification of what the net benefit gain from that assessment will be. Those things simply haven't been accomplished. All that's been asserted so far is, though, quote, those benefits shown on the report are true and correct, have been determined on a reasonable basis, and are hereby confirmed. Seriously? What benefits exactly? How do you define reasonable? Who actually confirmed said benefits? And how did they do it? None of that is evident for this project. Again, no verbal answers to these questions are acceptable today. We and the Common Council, we want to be fair, need lots more time to get this presumed issue handled much better than it has been, rather than finalizing any decisions or actions on it today. Unless you want to drop the whole item outright, which is the only truly, quote, reasonable basis, unquote, for settling it now. To finish, while we haven't been Milton citizens for very long, Joanne and I love and respect this city, its places of interest, and above all, its people. We always think in terms of what's best for our community, well ahead of our interests. That said, the only overall conclusion we could reach is that discriminatory, unjustified special assessments to resolve speculative only, non-urgent, non-emergency, and essentially trivial city concerns is clearly not a quote unquote reasonable basis for doing the sewer thing. With that, all I can add is that from what we've heard here, we agree wholeheartedly with all of the other affected property owners and residents. With that, I yield my time to who's ever next, and thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Inga?
Okay, I think we have everyone. I'm not seeing Katie Murphy on the meeting anymore. But is there anyone that we may have missed that wanted to speak? Is there anyone that we may have missed?
Jody Hay, but not on that topic.
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Okay, well, I think we should be good with the public hearing then.
Okay, so Inga has asked multiple times if there is anybody else that would like to speak on this item for public hearing. And we have not received any responses regarding this public hearing. So I'm going to close this public hearing. So the time for public comment and thoughts is closed, and I will turn this over to council members. And we have a process on how we do that. So I will stick with that process. However, Al, Mark, Howie, do you have any anything you want to say prior to us handing it over to council members?
Oh, just whatever questions the council has, we'll just try to answer them for you.
Anyone else? Okay, so Teresa, you're first on my list. Unmute yourself, unmute.
She's muted.
I'll go back to Pat. There were a couple of things you said, Pat, that I would like to, I guess, comment on. I guess everyone, I think that working with Zoom and under the COVID specifications, it has been difficult for all of us. I apologize that everyone feels left out of the process, but it has been set up with different regulations. It's different for everyone, and it has required that we all follow different steps. So my apologies. But there were some things that you did say that I would like to respond to. And one of those had to do with feeling that we had failed or are failing this process. And I did want to say that, or that we had from dealing with the first property. And I believe that that needs to be corrected, because we were notified and of the property, the first property, and we had checked, or Howie had checked with, was it Rock County?
I had talked to the county, and the property owner had contacted us because his septic system failed and it needed to be replaced, is what he told us. And he was doing that as part of his home sale. So that's how the sewer main, has progressed from there.
Okay, and then the council had asked Howie to look into whether or not that could be put off for some time, and given to allow the time to look into it further. And he spoke with the county and found that no, it had to be, you couldn't leave it go for a year. And so we would have to look into repairing it now, that we couldn't wait, and we had to look into finding the funds within our budget to do our end of it, and had to move forward. Correct, Howie?
Yeah, they will give you time, but they won't give you years or anything to fix it. Yeah, he
Right.
had to fix it. The owner of it did. Yeah.
And so that meant that we had to respond as well. And I also felt that, and I don't want to dispute with your husband's comment, but that it did not involve poor planning to necessitate the emergency, that it did, timing necessitated the emergency, that it required more of a response. And I would say that when this came up in 2016, there were chances for a response at that time, and and we talked about it at that time. I was part of the council then, that there were not emergency conditions at that point. And in fact, when I checked back to the discussion at that point, and looked back at the discussion, watched it on YouTube, I found that not only did we discuss it, I looked back at the costs that were put up for everyone were less than half of what they are being proposed to you now. So, the planning over time has been, something that we could have done quite some time ago. And I think we have to put some of that blame all on all of us, that this hasn't been just a quick decision. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Teresa. Linda? Unmute, Linda. Take a breath and unmute.
Okay, is that better?
If I can just hop in quick, I do have pretty much everyone muted right now, just because we do have so many people on the call. I'm trying to limit the background noise. So it's council's opportunity to speak. So when it's your turn, just unmute yourself and we'll be good to go.
Okay. I actually, I appreciate the response that we have gotten from our residents on Janesville Street. It was actually no surprise to me that we were going to have this type of a response, because it seems to me that every time that we do something on Janesville Street, we have residents that object. And not to say that they're not objecting for good reason. This is a very difficult time for all of us. And I can certainly appreciate what Joshua had to say about having his kids. And I can appreciate what Chuck Nelson had to say about your property values. The thing that you all need to realize that we all do as your council members is it's our job to make sure that our city infrastructure is set so that we don't have emergencies. I know that, Pat, you made a comment that when it fails, it becomes, it's not an emergency until it fails. Well, I, for one, would not like that type of an emergency in my house or in my neighborhood. I wouldn't want anybody to go through that. And this is why our city founders and former councils have come up with a plan so that as the city is growing, we can make sure that our infrastructure is in place. I understand that we've got engineers. Well, I have to tell you, the city also has our engineers, and we have got professional staff that does their due diligence in giving us their information. Now, one thing that I would like to offer is, you know, maybe some type of accommodation on the payment plan. I would not have a problem with. I certainly wouldn't. As far as the road, the sewer line and the water line, I'm going to be a hard hitter on this one, folks. This is our infrastructure, and we've got to get it lined up, and we've got to get it ready. And I'm on the edge of city too, and I have to go through things that you have to go through sometimes, and sometimes not. But it wasn't really even that long ago that we were asked when we were going to put a sidewalk all the way out on Janesville Street to Nelson subdivision. So I feel like we need to keep the things that we need to do with our increased population and future development. We've got to keep these things in the forefront. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Linda. Ryan?
I would like to add that this project was originally just looking at getting the sewer to one house, but then when it was mentioned that the sewer the rest of the way and that it might be cheaper in overall to do all one big project rather than just do one to one house now and then do the rest of the houses in the future when their septics might be failing or other points in the future. That's kind of why we went down the path of looking to do this as one larger project, is the cost savings of doing the project as a whole rather than doing it in batches. Because if we did it in batches, it's going to cost even more to do it. And that's what came out in the bidding that was done too, is that doing just this to the house would cost quite a bit more per linear foot than doing the entire project. So that's the reason why it became doing the whole linear footage and going that far is to basically try to have some cost savings to the project as a whole rather than just doing it in little portions. And the reason it wasn't necessarily brought to more than likely to everybody's attention back in April is because we were looking at one property, not all the properties in this, and that is something that grew from this project as well. Mm-hmm. I guess I have a question for Mark E. in your experiences, how much usually would something like this cost per linear foot when you've seen in the past? I know that your estimate that you had provided previously was more than the 55 that they're talking about, and I see just for literally just the open cut is like 75 per linear foot was an estimate. But I'm just kind of curious what your thoughts are as to what the usual price is per linear foot that you've seen in the past.
I did have some, or did look into a little bit of that with estimate being lower than the bid, and I had some conversations with the contractors. This project is being constructed in a street right of way that already has other utilities constructed. The roadway is constructed. There is higher cost to the project because of that. The $55 a foot that was previously mentioned may not be too far off. But again, that's a brand new subdivision where there's no gas services, no gas mains, no water services, no street pavements to try to protect and save costs. I also did talk to Mike Shoemaker. He did mention he's seeing, or would say, around $70 a foot. So it's a little higher than what he had mentioned to the previous resident, but you know, it's not a huge difference. But again, I would just say that those costs are specific to new construction. Anytime it's a reconstruction, there's going to be additional costs because, you know, we've got to work around things. For example, the retaining wall on the north end of the project that's on city property, you know, that's there. And, you know, while we might be able to save some cost to remove that, there's a tree on the private property that would most likely not survive. So those type of things all add to the project cost. The concrete pavement is also a pretty large cost of this too. Because of the depth, we will have to remove some pavement, and that does add a fairly substantial cost to the sewer installation.
I guess one other question I have for you, Mark, is if we were to push this off for a year or two, what do you think? How do you think it would affect the overall price? Do you think it would go up, stay the same, go a little down?
I tried to get some information about the bids. The base bid came in, again, higher than the estimate. Mm-hmm. Some of the feedback was mentioned in the bid tabulation memo. You know, there's a short window here. We weren't aware of this project or the need for the project until later this spring. And, you know, trying to get it completed within this construction season, again, due to the need, those were contributing factors to the cost. I guess, can you repeat all of your question again, Ryan?
I guess I was just wondering if we were to push this project off a year, maybe two, to kind of extend, you know, our time to plan it out, just hypothetically. I'm curious how much if it costs us more or less.
You know, I guess generally construction costs increase. I don't think that's ever, you know, there are cases where costs could come down. Something could change with the economy, the demand for contractors, the work available. I like to try to bid projects when there's, you know, not a lot of work on the contractor's books. That being said, we did get several bidders for this project. The low bid was, I think, around $75,000 lower than the next bidder, and I believe the next one after that was a fair amount higher as well. As far as if we were to try to bid it next year, you know, there might be a small cost savings in construction, but some of that would be offset by additional time for rebidding, engineering, updating the permit, you know, with the DNR. I mean, I guess I just can't really give a specific for what the cost would be, but I wouldn't expect a substantial change either way. You know, it would probably be similar to what we see now.
Okay. I mean, I work at a company that supplies the construction industry, and very rare is it that we ever heard of anybody's price coming down over time. So I was curious. Thank you. That's all my questions at the moment.
Thanks, Ryan. Devin.
First of all, I would just like to thank everyone for taking time out of their evening to voice concerns. I'm always happy to listen. But I think all my questions have really been summed up so far, and I'm going to agree with Teresa and Linda on this one.
Okay, thanks, Devin. Larry?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for all your comments. I've been listening carefully. A couple of comments back that I'd like to make directly to comments made by residents is two things. One is planning is really never trivial. I guess Teresa said it, and I'll say it again. One of my roles as a council member is to look out for the interest of the majority, if not all, of the citizens of the city. And sometimes in that role, difficult decisions are made or proposed in this case. Secondly, my son is a plumber, a master plumber in the state of Wisconsin, and he installs septic systems all over the state. And I talked to him yesterday. The average cost for him ranges closer to $12,000 to $15,000 to put a septic system in. And you have to remember that state-led laws and the DNR laws change every year. And he anticipates in his work that the demand of the systems is going to get much more intense. So there's going to be more requirements. In fact, in some parts of the state, it's getting very difficult to get a septic system installed. You have to go to a holding tank. And holding tanks cost anywhere between $75 and $150 a month to be pumped out. So we need to keep those costs in mind too for the homeowners. Replacing the system can be done, but again, what will the cost be to that homeowner to replace those systems? And we do have the issue of trying to figure out how to serve the future of the community. And unfortunately, in this case, it's requiring us to run a larger main through that area in order to plan for the future. That said, I'd be open if we could figure out a cost sharing type of scenario in this situation with these homeowners. I'd be open to discussing that or planning for that. But we have to understand and remember that there's been many property owners in the city that have been assessed for various projects. And I want to be cognizant of their contribution to this process and respect to the situation. That's all I really have to say. I appreciate you letting me speak.
Thank you, Larry. Bill?
First of all, I want to thank those of you who spoke this evening. The mayor asked everyone to be respectful, and everyone to a person truly was and brought terrific information. All of you did your homework, a lot of homework, and there's some impressive stuff there. The piece that intrigued me probably the most were a few of the comments that Lucas made regarding the size, really the disparities between this project and the other other projects. The fact that we're not just looking at a 15 or 20% increase over typical costs. We're looking at a magnitude several times over in terms of the costs that are here. I think there is an argument to be made that there are some exceptional circumstances that are applying to this. I think that what Lucas may have been suggesting was whether there was any ability for the city to unbundle some of these factors. I'm going to come down with the good infrastructure point of view from many. I think we do need to have sewers and water and that infrastructure in place. I also think that it is sensible when we're looking at a project like we're doing, not to do it in an undersized sort of way. So I think that the larger main makes every bit of sense. You don't, go back and do something else 10 years later because you vastly undersized things. I guess the question that I would ask is, whether there is any ability to unbundle some of these to arrive at an assessment that is, I think it's still going to be more. One factor that does need to be mentioned is these assessments kick in when the hookup is made, not right now. That's an important point as well. And Ryan's point that costs are likely to go up would suggest that if this is delayed for a period of time, short of doing something that frankly would be stupid, a smaller project or smaller mains and so on, that probably doesn't make sense. So the cost is likely to be more in the future than it is right now. However, I am intrigued and I'm wondering whether there is the possibility of the project being unbundled to try to identify some of those extreme costs that apply to this project that don't apply to typical projects, to come up with an assessment that may not be quite as high. The numbers that have been thrown around, frankly, as a retired person on a fixed income, certainly make me gasp. I guess if I were faced with that kind of an assessment, I'm wondering whether I'd be around to pay the last payment off. So, there's I think a question in terms of those dollars being multiple of what might be a typical amount. I think I come down in kind of summary on the side of we need to do the project. We can't afford to delay several years and make the project more expensive. But I'm more than willing to entertain any thoughts that might come from a different cost sharing kind of a relationship.
Thanks, Bill. Ryan, you had something?
Muted.
Sorry, is it better? Question for Al. I'm curious on what precedent we have in the past in situations like this. I assume we've had to run into this before. Did we provide 100% assessment on those previous projects, or how do we handle those?
Yeah, this is somewhat of a unique project. At least it's unique in the sense that, Mark really hit it on the head in the sense that this is coming in after the fact. There are certainly many, many, many situations in which a new development occurs, an oversized pipe is installed as part of that project when the original development occurs. For example, Red Hawk Farms. When that project was started, a 10-inch or maybe even a 12-inch main was installed. Certainly there was no need for that for those original 44 houses, but the idea is that it's needed to continue development to the south. That wasn't apportioned as an assessment because it was part of a new development, so the cost of that was then absorbed into the purchase price of those lots. How the developer apportions those sites or that cost to him, is up to his own economics. But this is unique in the sense that it's an existing situation, and Mark hit that right on the head. So in terms of precedent, assessments have always been, that 100%. We've never looked at a modified approach, at least in the time that I've been here, but I've only been here for 6 years. So we could have taken different approaches in the past. But that doesn't mean that we have to today. City councils have the discretion, which is exactly why this item is on the agenda, to levy assessments in any way, shape, or form that they choose to do so. They can apportion pieces of it or all of it. So, you know, that is within your discretion as the Common Council. But in terms directly of your question, precedent, I'm not aware of any precedent that exists. Howie can correct me if I'm wrong, of reapportioning or unpacking, as Bill said, which I think is a proper vernacular for this concept. I'm not aware that that has happened in the past.
All right, then a question to kind of add to that. Do we have other portions of the city that have a similar situation here where they don't have sewer main, but at some point probably will get sewer main?
There are very limited properties within the city of Milton that are on septic, but on, you know, within the city, or on well and within the city. There are very few. I think Dan maybe actually even has that number. Not to put him on the spot right here, but
I think there are I believe there's 4 sewer only properties. I don't know how many water so that's where they have a well but have their own septic or their own discharge system. There's 4 of those in the city. And then, or no, it's where they have their own well but discharge into the sewer.
Correct.
So they have their own water supply but discharge into the sewer. There's 4 of those. I don't know how many are on septic or their own discharge. Obviously these 8-9 parcels are. I believe when Howie and I were talking, there's a couple others down on
Vincent. Yeah.
So this might be a one-off situation then.
Yeah, I mean, we would run into this again along Vincent Street, which has come up a number of times in the past as property owners along Vincent, you know, kind of gauge whether they want to hook up or not, or, you know, what's the right time to do that. But in the event that one of their septics failed, they would be in the exact same situation that we're in right now with this. So I don't remember the property owners' names, but there's at least one property owner, maybe 2, that are on septic on Vincent, that if they were to fail, we would have to run sewer to them.
Okay.
But some of them have inquired about it proactively as to not get kind of caught. Is that correct, Howie?
Yeah, they have asked about the cost for connection.
Like even earlier this year, I feel like that question came up again. So.
Okay.
So again, it's not to say that we can't do what Bill is suggesting, but to answer your question directly, Ryan, I'm not aware that we have in the past.
Okay.
Linda?
I was just wondering, Dan, this is a 5-year payoff when they do get hooked up to the city. Can we extend that time period?
Yeah, we can do anything. I just lifted the language from the water main assessment that we did 4 years ago along the same stretch. And at that time, the council direction was at the time of hookup to offer a 5-year repayment at 5%. So I just copied that same language. So that was the only basis for that. But the council would have the discretion to choose whatever installment plan they so choose.
Ryan?
I guess a question this time probably for Dan. If we were to, the city were to take on a little bit more of the burden of the costs here, I assume we can handle it with what funds are already there, but otherwise, would it cause the water and sewage rates to go up in the city if we had to take on more of the burden?
When we brought the bid back, you know, when the council approved the bid, I believe it was at the end of June, or end of June, first meeting in June, whenever that approval was, like Mark Langer and I had said, from a realistic standpoint, at this point in time, there's only one parcel that's going to connect. And we don't know how long this deferral is going to sit out there. And so the sewer can handle the cash flow, knowing that it could be a very long time before all these would even get collected on. Because like we've stated, the assessments will not become due until time of hookup. So that could be 15 years from now, or it could be 2 years from now, or 6 months from now. So we didn't, when we were looking at projects in the sewer fund, we didn't anticipate any additional cash flow from these projects other than the one known parcel.
Okay.
Am I correct in saying that, Mark Langer?
Yes, that's correct.
That's what I thought I remembered, Dan, but I wanted to ask anyways.
And just to add to that, I think maybe another way to look at it is, you know, the sewer fund, which again, remember, is paid for by ratepayers. You know, it's not a for-profit entity that drives revenues from cost of goods sold. It's a fund that's paid for by the ratepayers. So in the event that that fund becomes less liquid or has uncollectible receivables, it jeopardizes future projects, which could then potentially jeopardize future ratepayers. So would the ratepayers of the city of Milton subsidize this project? In essence, they already are by supporting the carrying costs of the uncollected assessments for an unknown time. If those uncollected assessments go on, if a portion of those uncollected assessments become uncollectible assessments, because that's really what would happen if the city were to pick up a portion of this assessment. So if they were only assessed at 75%, that means that the remaining 25% would then become uncollectible. Then the ratepayers of the city of Milton would pay that 25%. So it's just another way to look at it. You know, the city of Milton as an entity is not a profit-driven entity that has the ability to, you know, sell goods. So you know, it's the ratepayers that pay for these costs. It's not, you know, we have $0.
Right. Thank you.
Teresa, did you have another question?
Yes, just a quick one. When the person decides to, you know, finally, if their septic goes out and it's not until, you know, 7-8 years from now, are they then paying the rate that we would set now, or what it is by the, yes?
Yeah, what happens commonly in I don't want to say most, but many other communities, is that interest begins at the time assessment is levied. So through a deferral process, that amount that is levied today would then accrue interest until such time that the assessment becomes due. So at the time of hookup. We do not do that in Milton. We don't have an interest cost on deferrals. And in other communities as well, you know, when a facility becomes available, hookup is mandatory. Hookup is required, especially if you have an attachment agreement or something of that nature. Again, we don't require that in Milton. So, so the costs that are set today within the resolution are the costs that these individual property owners, either here today or some future property owner who then is attached to this parcel, is the cost they will pay 6 months from now, 6 years from now, or 60 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, did you have a last question or comment before I kind of wrap this up a little bit?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the council wants to make changes on that time period, the 5 years in light of the COVID. I feel like, you know, everybody's having a hard time. Maybe extend it to 8 years or rather than 5.
I just want to remind people that 5 years doesn't start ticking until you hook up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So if you hook up 15 years from now, that's when the 5 years would start ticking. It's not ticking from today.
So I have a couple of questions. If we have these assessments on these on the properties and a property owner goes to sell the property, then how does that impact the sale of the property?
So
it would show up on a title search. So it wouldn't require require mandatory hookup or mandatory payment. Again, it would only become due at the time that hookup is acquired. So it would show up in a title search if the property was to be sold. So the new owner would be aware that the assessment exists. But again, that's another thing that Milton does that's not unique to Milton, but is not all the communities do. Some communities require at the time of sale the assessment becomes due. Again, we're not even doing that here.
And the subject property that triggered this whole discussion, that had sold to the previous owner 2 years ago, and that deferred water assessment, the original owner that owned it in 2016 did not have to pay that at the time of closing because that stayed with the property. And so the process, as Al alluded to, is exactly that. Until time of hookup, regardless of who the property owner is, we are not seeking any kind of payment. We are not adding on interest charges or anything like of that nature until said time is hooked up.
And then when the property sells, the new owner would not be mandated to hook up at that time either?
Provided their septic system has not failed, or in a failing state, or whatever the vernacular is the public health uses.
So this would prevent a homeowner that currently has a septic from replacing it with another septic. Is that correct?
Yes, it would.
So if we modified the resolution, this is a Mark Schrader question, I think. If we modified the resolution at all, we would not be able to vote on it, or we could vote on it and then have a second and third reading. I can't remember.
Resolutions don't require the second and third reading that an ordinance does, but so you have two options. If the council wanted to modify any of the proposed language for the final resolution, you could so modify it tonight and then vote to approve or not based on the modifications that were agreed to tonight. Or you could direct modifications to the proposed resolution and have it come back to you at a future meeting for action on the modified resolution.
And when do we have to get this project started, Howie or Mark or Dan?
Well, the contractor is ready, when he's available. So he's ready to start, would you say, Mark, in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I talked with Mike. He said he's available. He's working on some smaller projects here and there to keep busy, but it sounded as though he could be here, within a week or two, is what the way told it to me. So.
And it seems like you want to do the project, but you're just not sure of the assessment cost.
I think a couple of people had some questions about the assessment costs, and I'm wondering what, Dan, can you just figure out some numbers right now? What is the difference between those two sizes? Are we going with a larger size because the DNR is recommending we go with a larger size? Are we going with a larger size because of stormwater issues, because of climate change and the intensity of rainfall that we get in a short period of time? Are we doing it solely for future development? Those are a couple of questions I have.
So generally, and I think even some of the comments mentioned this, that it's good practice, it's standard to try to maintain your sanitary sewer as deep as you can for as long as you can. The reason for this is the cost of gravity sewer is much cheaper than installing a lift station. Lift stations come with operational expenses. They're higher cost to construct. So there's sound reasoning behind the sewer. The 10-inch sewer, again, it's a larger sewer to provide more capacity in the sewer for future service. The 8-inch sewer, as stated, like along Nelson, is appropriate for a sewer main in a subdivision. This sewer main is larger and deeper. So those are correct statements. And the reasons, again, is providing for additional service beyond these residents.
So Dan, what's the difference?
I don't think we have those costs like right at our disposal to just crank out a number here tonight. I think if the council wanted to unbundle, as Alder Wilson alluded to earlier, we would just need direction, so then we could bring forth what those new assessments would look like at a future meeting, similar to what Attorney Schrader had referenced in, I believe it was his option 2 scenario. So there won't be any approval of an assessment tonight, but direction from the council to bring back a modified assessment amount based on the unbundling.
Bill and then Larry.
Yeah, one question. Can the work proceed without the assessment being in place?
Yes, it can.
Okay. I would hate to miss a season and incur additional costs by delaying the project. So I think getting the project going is important. If it takes another meeting to create that change in assessment or consider that change in assessment, I think that's where I am. I certainly agree the project needs to go forward. The project needs to go forward. We employ Howie and Mark to provide good professional advice in terms of the sizing, the depth, all of those kinds of things. I just believe that there are extraordinary circumstances here that are driving the cost of the assessment. So I'm for the project, would like to see the project moving forward, but would like to see an attempt at some of that unbundling. And I think Lucas mentioned 2 of the factors, the depth and the size, and the opportunity to take a look at what that potential revised assessment framework would look like.
I have one more question. I'm sorry if this seems like I'm belaboring the point. And I have great faith and respect for the recommendation of staff and Howard and Mark and everything. And I'm just trying to get a better understanding too. And I agree that it has to be as deep as they recommend. So that's not really the question. I believe that we would want it that deep regardless if we thought there was going to be any type of future development or not, just because that's the best practice. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The best practice is to plan for the future. You want to put it in so you can, as earlier said, you don't want to put in something small and then replace it with something larger just in a few years. But the best practice is to, like Mark said, put your sewer in as deep, whatever the size is, to plan for the future.
And, I recognize there was, some criticism of earlier city planners for not being as thoughtful, I guess. And we don't, I think everybody that's elected and works for government does the best that they can at the time. But, we have run into situations where we've had to make adjustments and costly adaptions because of previous planning. So our hope is we don't have to do that in the future. It sounds like to me, like, so Mark, do we have to vote on the resolution for the project to go forward?
Larry has a comment still.
Oh, Larry, sorry.
That's okay. The only thought I had is I agree with Alder Wilson. We go back and take a look at how we can do that. The one comment I have is a portion of this project will benefit the city of Milton as a whole. Future development, no doubt, brings in additional tax revenue, but it also brings in additional expenses. So we have to always balance the two. This is not going to, as Al said early on in the evening, this is not a money-making proposition for the city. It is a maintenance of infrastructure. But saying that, it's still a unique project. And we only have a couple other instances in the city where this situation is going to come up. So I'm comfortable with us going back to I'd like us to proceed if we can tonight with the project itself, but going back to the discussion and evaluation by city staff as they appropriately can to bring us into a different mixture of shared costs.
Okay, so Mark S. Suggestions moving forward tonight.
Well, one option is for there to be a motion to direct staff to come back to council with a second option for the final resolution to include the cost based on an 8-inch sewer main located at a normal, quote unquote, normal depth for a subdivision. I believe that's what I heard in terms of the options being addressed as being unbundled to date. So that would be one option if there wanted to be a motion to that effect, and then you presumably be brought back maybe at the next meeting, whatever. But that would be one option.
Mark, there was also discussion about increasing from a 5-year payment plan to an 8-year or a different number. Would that be a separate motion, or is that something they'd include in this motion if they decided they want to go that route?
They could include that in one motion.
And can the project start without the resolution?
The answer was yes.
Yes, it can.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so because I want to make sure that our guests and all of the council and staff understand the process, that from what I gather, the council is in favor of going ahead with the project, and that would get started. I didn't hear any support for delaying it, and I'm just summarizing what I've heard so far. The council is taking into consideration the comments that were made tonight, and there may be an interest of looking at the assessment, how it's divided up, and the length of the repayment. And so everybody is kind of on the same page and is hearing the same thing and understanding the same thing. Linda?
Mayor, I have to respectfully disagree with Bill on this one, and you also, Larry. And the reason that I would disagree with you is because we have people that have given us this information, and this is the information that we have. The sizes, that's where we got our numbers from. As Howie stated, best practice. I'm a firm believer in do it right the first time. I mean, nobody has time to go back and tear up the road and do this again in the event that 8-inch isn't going to work.
I don't think that's what Attorney Schrader was referencing. What he was and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you were recommending is we try to just figure out what the cost of a 8-inch sewer main would be at normal depth, and then we would assess based on that cost, and then the utility would bear the additional overcost of the way that we feel is the best way to build the system at the deeper depth and the larger main.
Yes, I was just repeating what I'd heard to be the discussion was not to change the specifications for the project. The discussion was whether or not to change the basis for the special assessment. And then what was being discussed was as an option to consider would be special assessment based on what the cost of an 8-inch main at normal depth would be, not what it's going to be. And then as Inga mentioned, also putting in there the option of an 8-year payout as opposed to a 5-year. But that, it's still an option. You'd have then 2 options to consider, this resolution and then the second resolution.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Linda. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and Bill, one last comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. What I'm suggesting is what what Dan was mentioning. I think if we're going to change the assessment, it needs to be based on something. We can't just make up numbers and say, it would be lovely and it would be nice to say, okay, we're going to cut the assessment in half. It would be irresponsible to other taxpayers to do so. So in order to do it right, we need to do it based on some specific factors. In light of the COVID, follow the science, I guess, is what we're saying here. To apply some engineering criteria to this and say, if a different criteria had been applied, it won't be because we're going ahead with the full project. If a different criteria had been applied, this is what the assessment would look like. And we can then go to the taxpayers and say, we believe because of future potential development and so on, it is fair and reasonable to expect that the general taxpayer will pick up a portion of these costs, the costs that are extraordinary.
And the only other thing I would caution on the stretching out the repayment, we're already allowing a deferral with no interest. So if people hook up 10 years from now, there's already a 10-year delay in that payment. So I would just caution on extending that repayment longer than 5 years because of that deferral that Alan and I had previously talked about.
Okay. So somebody has to make a motion.
I think Larry's got a question.
Nope, I'm not taking any more questions. We have to make a motion at some point. We can't just talk about.
He wants to make a motion.
Larry, you're muted right now.
I'm not asking a question. I want to make the motion.
Well, you were wrong.
Call the question is what I'm saying.
He's calling the question. Okay, somebody make a motion.
So I'll make it. I move that we instruct staff to go back with this. Number one, I move that we move forward with the project, with the construction itself. Number two, that we ask staff to go back and develop an alternative resolution for the special assessment to consider the issues that were discussed, mainly the 8-inch main installed at a normal, or what would be considered normal depth, and look at the difference between that and the current full assessment, and come back with a recommendation for that special assessment using those numbers. And also that we would hold to a 5-year payback, 5-year, what do you call it?
Installment
on the payment of that assessment that results from that resolution, with the understanding that we are deferring interest from the beginning.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody a nay?
Aye.
So if I got it correctly, there's 5 yeses and 1 no. And that motion carries. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, for sharing your thoughts, all the time and the effort that you put into your research, being thoughtful about your comments and engaging the council. I hope you found it worth your time and effort. And I hope to see you back at the next meeting. And it's the meeting agendas are posted at the 3 locations, but they're also posted on the city website, on Facebook, and Inga, am I missing any others?
I typically do a general post just outlining what the upcoming meetings are. I typically post that on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Okay, so keep your eyes out and look for that future agenda. And Al, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, what I would say is in this situation, because we have so many people who are interested and are so involved in this, when we bring back whatever that modified resolution is, we can certainly send an email to the folks that appeared here this evening. I think we have most of their email addresses. And it seems like they're a pretty tight-knit group, so we can certainly send them an email and say, hey, here's the agenda item, this is the agenda. I think we can get this on the next agenda, but I don't want to speak for Mark Langer. I know that Mark has run a bunch of the numbers that have already been talked about here tonight, but I think we need to, make sure that those numbers are A, still accurate, and B, are based on, the criteria that Bill has explained. So I think, that's easily accommodatable to get that information out. I just don't want to create any expectations for somebody that it absolutely will be the next meeting, because I want to make sure that we've got good information and that the information is based in science, as Bill said.
Mm-hmm. So that means you're just going to have to keep checking out the city website.
Well, we'll send an email.
And we'll send an email too. But I don't want anybody to miss something that they want to participate in. And I really do appreciate you participating. And Linda, did you have one last comment on this?
Yes, I was just going to say that it seemed like there were some people that didn't want to do this via electronic. So I'm wondering if maybe you could just drop an agenda to them in the mail.
We're going to send them an email, Linda.
People that just the people that have come to speak.
Al had said he was going to send everybody an email.
I think I recognize most of these names.
So
from emails. So I'm it seems like they're a pretty tight knit group. So I think the word will get out. Certainly have Pat's, certainly have Lucas's, certainly have Frank's, even though I don't see him on here anymore. So we'll get the word out.
Thank you, everyone.
I've got Chuck's
Thank
too.
you.
So.
We know where Chuck lives too.
Yeah, we can find him. But thank you, really.
Thank you.
Questions.
We really appreciate it. So you are welcome to stay for the rest of the council meeting and the.
It only gets better from here. It only gets better.
It only gets better because, I have a very, very special team building activity that requires you to do nothing but listen, and it's not even to listen to me. So or you can come and go as you please. Take a half-hour break. Come join us. We're going to be here for a while.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Public hearing on discussion and possible action on final resolution 2020-21 regarding assessments for the lift station and sanitary sewer main installation along Parkview Drive.
So similarly to the last item, this is a public hearing for an assessment resolution for assessments to be levied in response to the installation of the sanitary sewer force main as well as lift station number 12. The way this one is slightly different is the work is already done on this one, as opposed to the other one where the work, where the assessment was levied prior to the work or previous to the work. So the assessment is levied on this one on a per acre basis. The vast majority of these properties that are affected are undeveloped. In fact, only one of the properties that is affected is developed. So it's a little bit different than the last one in that regard. So, and there's only 4 properties that are affected as opposed to 11. That's all I have.
Okay. So same rules, same process as a previous public hearing. And I will open the public hearing. And Inga, do we have anybody that would like to speak on this issue?
Okay, who do I have first? Tim Lindau? I did not unmute you yet because we went back and forth before. Do you want me to? I'll do it. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to defer a vast majority of my time to those who spoke in the first public hearing, so you don't need to worry about me being too long-winded this evening. Just wanted to essentially comment regarding the proposed project for Milton Red Hawk Apartments. It is currently postponed and will likely not take place this year. We regret to inform you all of that, and we're hoping to get that project off the ground. Of course, the special assessment issue was directed towards that project, and so we understand that as a condition of that, there's going to be special assessments that will become immediately due and payable next year, and we're ready to make good on those special assessments. And we understand too, going forward, that the additional special assessments on the remaining portion of our land, and to be clear, I'm here representing Capital Asset Investments LLC and Red Hawk Apartments of Milton LLC. We would just simply ask that the appropriate deferrals be placed on the remaining properties per your policy for either some sort of land division, site plan review, building permits, etc. But we understand that as it relates to the 12 acres, that will become due and payable calendar year 2021. If I'm mistaken, I know Al will let me know that. But just wanted to say thank you for your assistance today, and we look forward to working with you going forward on any number of projects that we currently are exploring. So thank you.
Thanks. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at this public hearing? Inga, anybody else?
I believe everyone else is here for different agenda items.
Okay.
So we should be set.
Okay, so not seeing or hearing any further interest in public comment at this public hearing, I will now close the public hearing and turn it over to staff and council.
Yeah, Attorney Lindau hit on a couple of points that are different on this one. Assessments on this one would not come due until there is a land division, a site plan approval, or a TIF development agreement. And as he referenced, there is a TIF development agreement already in place with Red Hawk Apartments. He acknowledged that, and that the TIF development agreement indicates that assessments would become due once assessed. So Red Hawk Apartments assessments would become due immediately, well, not immediately, but become due at the time that they are assessed, which I believe is based on the resolution November 1st, 2020. So close to next year, Tim, but not quite there. And then same would apply for the YMCA.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Teresa, anything? Okay. Linda? Ryan?
Nope.
Devin?
No.
Larry?
No, thank you.
Bill?
Nope.
Is there a motion? Sorry, Bill?
I would
Is-
move approval of Resolution 2020-21, authorizing special assessments against benefited properties for the installation of a sanitary sewer lift station, sewer main, sewer interceptor main, and appurtenances along Parkview Drive.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposing this? Bill's getting great entertainment from this resolution.
I looked up that word because the first time I read it, I thought that's not correct. But apparently it's some sort of engineering vernacular that they made up to make themselves.
It's a good word for extras.
Yeah.
Oh.
I looked it up. I thought it was wrong.
Appurtenances.
Appurtenances.
Okay.
Is that Marky Mark
There you
showing
go, Al.
off his smarts? I thought that might have been Mark S. trying to increase our vocabulary.
No, that was Tim Lindau trying to show up Al.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're the show off.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion passed, and we are moving right along to item number 9. Discussion and possible action regarding number 8. Discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 476, permitting and keeping chickens in residentially zoned districts.
So this was an item from our last meeting. Although there's not a public hearing scheduled, there was a public hearing scheduled for last meeting. There's not one this one, but it's of course up to the mayor as the chair of the meeting to allow public comments. We had a lengthy discussion about ordinance number 476. There was some feedback provided by the council for some tweaks in the ordinance, and we have made those changes, particularly in reference to some of the language that was in there, and also have prepared a resolution, which is a future item for the fee, permit fee.
Okay, so correct me, anybody, if I'm wrong. This is the second reading, correct?
Correct.
All right. And we have guests that may want to speak or may not want to speak. So Inga, I'll let you see what our guests are wanting for tonight.
Yep. Stu Ellison, did you want to say anything?
Yes. I just have a couple comments on the permit requirements. On section C, it says feed and water must be made unavailable to rodents. It does not stipulate like Janesville's does. Excuse me?
Are we talking about the permit now, or is this part of the ordinance?
Well, it's permit requirements, so it would be part of the ordinance, I would think.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. That feed and water must be made unavailable to rodents. Janesville stipulates stored, because any feed and water that's out for the chickens at that time is going to be accessible to rodents. I mean, mice can get into anything. So that could be a reason why they could not give a permit to anybody. And the other thing is the fee that's on part of it. It does not stipulate if this is a one-time fee or a reoccurring. So that was the only comments I had or questions.
Thank you. Inga?
Laura, you were someone else who wanted to speak on the chickens, I believe.
I'm actually just listening, and I was here for the last one, and I really don't have any questions, but that is a good point about the fee, that it does not actually say if it's annual or a lifetime membership.
Thank you, Laura. And I think that's it. Yep, all of our public members for tonight for this item.
Okay, so I'm just going to go to council now. And then we can talk. Bill.
No comments.
Larry?
No comments.
Devin?
No comment.
Ryan?
No comments.
Linda?
Yes, I was actually wondering, I tried to send everybody a picture. I don't know if you got it or not, but one of the concerns that I have is how close we are allowing the chickens to be in proximity to multifamily housing. As you all know, I mean, our city founders have set up multifamily housing in specific areas. Some of that does back up to single family homes. So I was just kind of wondering what everybody else was thinking about that. If you are living in a condominium and you're in a single family neighborhood, or if you're in a fourplex or over by the senior living, any of those places. I was just wondering if the council feels that those things need to be addressed.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Teresa?
Yes, and Linda did mention that to me too, and boy, I didn't have an answer. I hadn't even thought of that. But I also was contacted, first of all, I had received a couple of very positive comments. They were glad we were looking at it and felt it should be approved. But one contact I had received, I didn't have an answer for. One was a couple who already have some chickens. They live just outside the city limits and have a few chickens, but they were required to have a registration by law through the state of Wisconsin. Everyone that has chickens has to have this registration. And it's a free registration, but it through the state, it helps to locate they keep a database, and it's set up to require information in case there's some type of outbreak or anything. And I wondered, when I look at ours, it says that we are requiring them to submit this information to the city, but then do we submit this to the state of Wisconsin, or are we giving them the information to submit to the state of Wisconsin themselves?
Anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
not me.
I'm aware of that, Teresa, and that is an obligation. I talked to a couple chicken owners. That is an obligation that the state asks for that information. So they're to provide that straight to the state through their form. The city isn't in. The other cities are not collecting that information as fast.
Yeah, but somehow somehow they should be informed.
I guess, yeah. They probably will be when they purchase their ticket.
Oh, okay, all right. Just so they know.
I'm just saying, yeah, that's what I.
Yeah.
Is that a note maybe we could even just add to the permit form?
Yeah. And on the permit form, you have to follow applicable city and state rules.
Okay.
So if there's a form, we'll just have it together with the permit form.
Okay, because it's noted on the state of, I looked it up, it's on the state of Wisconsin site, so you should be able to access the information easily.
Okay.
So, okay, just.
And then the other question you had about the distance from a residential structure is 25 feet.
Oh.
From on another parcel. So they have to be at least 25 feet away from a separate residential structure, no matter which lot that they're on.
Okay.
And they can only have those in the the coop can only be in the rear yard.
Okay, that's good.
So
And
you
in term-
can't have a coop on a corner? On a corner
If it-
lot?
if it's in the rear yard, yeah, then you could. As long as it's 25 feet away from the neighbor's house.
Okay.
And even if you are, if you're a condominium or a duplex, more so a condominium, you would be notified of your neighbor's request to have a permit or to have chickens. So you would get a notification in the mail in the same way that a single family occupant would. If you're a renter, that notification would go to the property owner. So whether you're a 2-unit, 4-unit, or 96-unit, the owner of that facility would be notified of a request to have a chicken in the proximity through the public hearing process. So the rules wouldn't necessarily be any different for multifamily or single family.
Thank you.
Oh, and then the permit is planned to be just one time. It's like, that's what we get for a
Right.
shed permit and,
Yes.
or anything like that. So it's with the building permit process. So it's planned for a one-time cost.
Yes, and I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Mark S, I thought that was enumerated in the ordinance somewhere, that it is a one-time fee.
Yeah.
What it states is in section 6-201 of the proposed ordinance that a permit issued by the city is required for the keeping of chickens. So it doesn't state that it's a yearly, but neither does it state, it doesn't state that it's a forever permit, but neither does it state that it must be renewed on a yearly basis. So it's really like any other permit, say with a building permit. A building permit doesn't state that it's a permanent permit. It just says that it's a permit. So how I would interpret that as, unless the ordinance states that it's only for a year, then once it's issued until it lapses or is revoked.
Okay.
So I don't need to get another permit for my deck after it's already been constructed. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you want to, I guess. That's really...
Every year that everybody owns a deck, they need to renew.
Or if you make major modifications.
Okay, so then what about the feed storage question?
I would have to defer to Larry on that one.
Oh, sorry, I keep unmuting and muting. Forgive me. Again, I think the intent of that wording was that they would avoid or do everything in their possibility to avoid vermin from getting at that feed. But I would argue that vermin also can get in mulch bins, can get into garden plots. I have gophers and I have all kinds of other creatures that come into my gardens quite regularly. So I think the intention is there. I'm not overly concerned about it. And again, the storage, well, of course, we want them to not store the feed outside, that they would store it in the proper container until it's dispersed to the chickens. That's all I really have to offer for that.
Mark S., do you think that's sufficient for future councils or enforcers? Do we need to make any changes to that wording?
I understand what was being stated here, and in terms of interpretation, how I would interpret the current language stating that feed and water must be made unavailable to rodents, is it's talking about the storage of these items. I think that it would be conceded by any enforcement that if you're feeding them, it's going to be, it's going to be available, as he said, theoretically to rodents. Also, it's not going to be stored. So, I mean, if we take it literally that feed and water must be stored, then you couldn't feed them. So I think that this current language accomplishes the intent, which is to not make feed and especially feed, not necessarily water so much, but feed readily available to vermin. So yes, if you're not storing it would be one way to do that. Not overfeeding would be another way to do it. So you can get feedback from Howie, but I don't see this as being an issue in enforcement, where the enforcement is going to find a violation where feed is being laid out in normal to chickens, and there might happen to be a mouse get in the pen area. But Howie can comment.
Yeah, most people are going to keep the food stored in the garage or in a can someplace, because if you leave it out, it's going to get ruined with the rain or something. So I'm okay with the wording. I mean, I know what you mean. I don't think you have to have stored in there. I think it's no different. It'd be hard to even feed your cats or dogs, and similar to that, where it's that kind of food is stored. And I don't think people are going to want the waste of it anyways if it's not stored in a garage or some container anyways. So I'm okay with the wording the way it is. That's what I'd expect, for if you had a complaint, if we had to go there and look at it, it would be because there's bags of feed laying around, which aren't going to happen. So out in the open, bags of feed. So.
Okay, so we could have a motion to approve and waive the third reading tonight. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you could make a motion to approve the second, waive the third, and adopt, or approve the second and have the third reading at a future meeting.
All right. The mayor is willing to entertain a motion. Larry.
I move to approve the second reading, waive the third reading, and adopt the ordinance as it states tonight.
Second.
Bill, Larry's motion, Bill has seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody against? If you're against, can you say no? Okay. Mark Langer, were you shaking your head no?
How dare you?
All right, that motion passes, and welcome to chickens.
Cool.
So excited. Okay. And again, everybody is welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. Discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 477, permitting and keeping of bees in the city of Milton.
Similar to the, I've talked so much I had to have some Gatorade. Similar to the last item, this is the second reading of the bee ordinance. There was a couple of requests made or direction given by the council for some language within the proposed ordinance. Those have changed. We've made those alterations and brought forth ordinance 477 for its second reading.
Okay, Inga, will you see if any of our guests would like to comment or have questions?
I guess Stu or Laura, do you have anything you wanted to say about this one?
No, I don't.
Nope, me neither.
Okay. And I think that's it.
Okay. Well, council, here we go. Let me get my list ready. I'm going to start in the middle now to make it interesting. Devin, any questions or comments?
No.
Larry?
No.
Bill?
No buzz from here.
Teresa?
No. Thank you.
Linda,
Nope.
Ryan.
Nope.
Oh my gosh, we're getting faster as the night goes on. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance, ordinance 477, and approve the second reading, waive the third reading, and adopt.
Linda seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody a no? All right, we got the birds and we got the bees. All right, so now what is it going to cost everybody? Discussion and possible action on resolution 2/2022 establishing a permit fee for the keeping of chickens and or bees in the city of Milton.
So resolution 2020-22 establishes the permit fee for both chicken and bees. And what we have done with the resolution is we have established it to be the minimum building permit fee as established pursuant to section 1084. The reason that is the minimum building permit fee can be amended from time to time. And so we didn't want to continually have to amend multiple resolutions. Currently, the minimum building permit fee is $55. So we thought that that was an appropriate fee for Howie's time and Leanne's time to review the applications and have Howie review the site plans, and then to verify that the coop is constructed in the location and proximity that it was identified within the site plan, and conversely, whether the hive or stack was placed in the area that it was indicated to be placed in the site plan. So it's not to say that Howie's time and Leanne's time is only worth $55, but that is the fee that we established. So as the minimum building permit fee increases from time to time, as it may, this would likewise increase as well.
But it would be a one-time fee. So I could pay $55 this year, have chickens, decide next year not to have chickens. 3 years later, I want to have chickens again. It could cost me more money.
Correct. That is correct.
It is not a lifetime permit.
Discontinuation of use would cause the permit to be void.
Okay. Ryan?
No comments.
Linda?
No comments. I'd make a motion if you're ready.
Well, we have to take turns here. Teresa?
No comment.
Devin?
No comment.
Larry?
Just one, and Elle, you probably know the answer to this, or Howie. A resident asked me if they sold their property and they had a beehives on the property at the time of the sale, would the new property owner have to get the permit? My answer was yes, most likely, correct?
Yes.
That's the only thing I want to
That's how it is indicated, but we'd also want to know contact information, things like that. So yes, they would need to reapply if they want to keep it.
Correct.
Bill?
No comment.
Is there a motion? Linda?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2020-22 establishing a permit fee for keeping chickens and or bees in the city of Milton.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. That motion carries. Wrapping that up, discussion and possible action on Hay Adams LLC's application for a Class B retail license fermented malt beverage and a Class B retail intoxicating liquor.
So this is an application for Hay Adams LLC for an application for a Class B retail license. Jody and Susan Adams have applied for the Class B license for their business at what was formerly Bunker's Bar and Grill and now Susie Q's along North Janesville Street. They have completed the background check and were satisfactory to Chief Markwart and Clerk Schrader.
And just quick, Jody is on the call, so if there's any questions, she's available.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for sticking in there.
No, this was kind of interesting. I might go get some chicken.
Yeah, really.
Does anybody have any questions for Jody, Teresa? Teresa, nothing?
No, I'm sorry.
Linda? That's okay.
No questions, thank you.
Brian?
Nope.
Devin?
No.
Larry?
I do have one. Jody, do you anticipate operating the business much differently than what it's operated at now, as now?
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Bill?
No.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Linda, second by Devin. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That motion carries. Oops. Sorry about that. Most of the time I'm muted, as it should be. So that motion carries. Item number 12, discussion and possible action regarding revisions to semi-parking ordinance 22478. I really thought we were done with this.
So did I.
I saw that on the agenda.
Yeah. Sorry to revisit for you all. It will be a shorter discussion, hopefully, than the last time we had this. We've had a lot of great luck with this program, and we have people using Commerce Way. We are reducing the parking of semis around the city, and we ran into a situation a few weeks back that we were considering issuing a citation with somebody who just wasn't taking our advice. And in a research of the ordinances to prepare that, we discovered a couple of things that we wanted to change in order to make things more clear. The first was just an omission during the edit process where we left out the word tractors, semi-tractors, in 70-154 sub C. The entire discussion was on tractors, so just as the back and forth went, I think we just missed that word in one of the revisions, so that's one of the things I'm requesting. The second one is almost adding additional permissions than what we originally talked about. Primarily due to a misunderstanding on my part and how the language was constructed, I was under the understanding that semi-tractors with trailers could park on Commerce Way, but that having attached trailers was never part of any of the drafts that we prepared. So because it's been working well and people with tractors with attached trailers have been parking there and it hasn't been causing any issues, we wanted to try to allow that. And so again, matching our language with practice, which is one of my things I try to do. We would like to include extra language in 70-183 sub B to also include truck tractors and tractor semi-trailer combinations. I want to point out that we are not doing trailers alone. I don't want Commerce Way to turn into a dumping spot for trailers, but it is, I think it's useful to allow folks to use it with their attached trailers. One other thing that came up today, I had a community member contact me after he saw the memo the agenda that went out and the language that was proposed. You notice we also include trucks 12,000 pounds or more gross weight. That has more to do with dump trucks and cement trucks and large straight trucks. They aren't semis or semi trailer attached, but they're large vehicles and over a certain weight on our roadways, and we want to try to get those out of our neighborhoods too, I think is important. But the point that he brought up was even large personal use diesel trucks are now coming in over 12,000 pounds. So he had concerns that we were, may restrict somebody's personal vehicle by the language in this ordinance. The discussion that he and I had and language that we agreed on, that rather saying trucks 12,000 pounds or more, we say commercial motor vehicles 12,000 pounds or more. That's not in the memo. It's not in the draft language. That's something that just came up today. But I wanted to have that part of the conversation here tonight too. And I'd like some opinion on it, especially from Howie, if that language makes sense in the truck world.
He's muted.
Hit the button, Howie.
He just doesn't want to talk anymore.
Sorry about that. I do remember like the part of a long time ago, the 12,000 pound came about because of some of the traffic on Stores Lake, because there were some commercial businesses that were cutting across, through the Milton House area and stuff. So, and that was intended at that time for tow trucks and, just some of the smaller commercial trucks that, had a lower weight than a semi, but were over 12,000. So, but just the way modernization is, like what you're talking about would be commercial trucks are, bigger than that, but not like a semi. So the residential trucks are pretty good size, most of them.
So, so are we thinking that we would want to add the language that you just discussed into the ordinance and bring it back then, or do a first reading and then come back with that new language?
Yeah, I'll throw it to Mark S., but that was what I was thinking, is this be considered the first reading tonight, and then we'll alter that commercial motor vehicle language and bring it back for a second reading. If that's okay with Mark S.
That's one option. That's one option. You can have direct that be amended in 154C and 183B, instead of saying trucks 12,000 pounds or more, you say commercial trucks 12,000 pounds or more. So you can have that. I guess you could theoretically direct that just be done at this time and then pass it. But since you do have a procedure set up in the ordinance for second and third readings, that would be consistent with that process to have it amended as suggested and then come back.
Well, don't all make a motion at once because it'll confuse me. Ryan?
I make a motion to make the changes suggested to the ordinance and bring it back for a second reading.
I'll second.
So it's a motion to approve the first reading and
Yep,
direct staff to amend the ordinance and bring it back for a second reading.
Correct.
And then Teresa, you're seconding that?
Yes.
And Mark S., we're good with that?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that carries. Well, we don't have to have any public hearing on this. Unless we want to. Discussion, direction, and possible action regarding the creation of a vacant property ordinance.
So this item has come up in conversations with at least one council member regarding properties within the city of Milton that are vacant and in essence not being cared for. They are properties that oftentimes have code violations or multiple code violations. and oftentimes have multiple code violations over the course of multiple years. So the question was, would the city be able to create a vacant property ordinance to help mitigate some of these repeat code offenders and provide any potential motivation or additional motivation for those property owners who have vacant properties to maintain those properties on a more regular basis. So in research that was done by Alder Wilson, as well as myself, in contacting other communities who have vacant property ordinances, what we found is that there are multiple communities that have such a thing, including the city of Janesville, just to our south. One piece to note from at least the city of Janesville's perspective, in which they drafted their ordinance almost verbatim from the city of Milwaukee's, is that it doesn't provide the city any additional enforcement mechanism. It simply provides the city a mechanism to track properties that are vacant, as well as have a contact individual. So when property maintenance issues arise, they can track somebody down. So oftentimes in larger cities, there's multiple vacant properties, and it's hard to find who the owner is if it's not under a management company, and it may be an absentee property owner. They have a database then. So one thing that we may want to consider, if the root of the concern and the goal of the program is to have a greater level of enforcement, we would probably look to strengthen our existing nuisance ordinances in addition to this, or simply strengthen our existing nuisance ordinances and without a vacant property ordinance. But provided that information, we wanted to get direction from council as to see if this is something we would want to pursue. And I know Alder Wilson has done additional research and may have something else to add. I don't want to speak for him.
Well, one of the things, that when I had reported the concerns about the property earlier to you, Al, that with the complaints from neighbors that we had talked about was that, that it could be something that was a tiered level of issues and concerns that we could report to the current property owner that was that would gradually increase. For example, the first year they would rest on the current violations that we have in place, but by the time the second year rolled around, if they still weren't mowing the lawn and whatever, then the size of the fines would increase and the timing. We wouldn't wait until 2 weeks were gone before we'd start sending out a letter and having the city mow the lawn. We would step it up so that they weren't a nuisance and they weren't offensive to the neighbors.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and that would be the other approach. That we could, I believe, we could handle that through our existing nuisance ordinance by creating, I don't know what vernacular we want to call it, but a habitually nuisanced property or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'm not sure those types of ordinances exist, but I'm guessing they do.
I think at least, aside from what you do dealing with the owner, this would help to accommodate some of the neighbors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to add to
Larry, I guess you're just free flowing it now, huh?
What?
Go ahead, Larry.
To add to that, then that escalation might be, instead of the city taking the lead in mowing, which we don't need to be doing all the time either, I'm sure that DPW has other things to do as well, that we would say to the property owner, you need to have it mowed. You need to contact a landscaper or a mowing company and get that mowed, and if not, there'll be further penalties or further assessments or whatever we do. At some point, like the first year, maybe we mow for them when they don't do it. But after that, we start being a little more firm and saying, you choose not to mow, we're not taking care of it for you, but we still expect it to be mowed. It's just like that.
Ryan?
I think if they aren't mowing it already, they're probably not going to mow it anyway. So at least by the city mowing, they're kind of making it look decent. But anyways, besides that, I have no comment about it.
Devin?
No comment.
Bill?
I guess my only comment, I'm not necessarily tied to the idea of the vacant property registration ordinance idea. What I am tied to is, there needs to be some effective way that starts to make it either inconvenient or costly for vacant property owners to ignore properties. And some sort of a tiered system of charges, first time X, second time Y, where things elevate over time. I think exploring that is fine as well. The idea really would be to trigger one of a couple things happening. One would be the owner of the property contracting with someone to take care of it, or secondly, for them to say, this is starting to cost me money, I'd be better off selling it. So it's not a vacant property anymore. So I think the approach of looking at some sort of a tiered plan would be acceptable. The one thing that I'd add to that is, in that tiered kind of a framework, I think looking at the current nuisance kind of thing, it really isn't clear what would trigger a violation that could be considered in the health and safety category. Basically, in my understanding anyway, when the grass gets over a certain length, Howie's crews go and take care of it after a certain period of time, and they probably do an eyeball inspection of the outside of the property at that point to identify whether there are obvious deficiencies. In looking at what some other municipalities have got, some of them go a little bit further in describing those. And I don't know whether it's practical to think that a citizen complaint could trigger a health and safety kind of a violation. I know the property owner on Green Hill raised the issue about water penetration and believing that it was likely that water was probably getting into the basement because of the lack of a combination of lack of downspouts and clogged gutters. It does become a problem if we've got a petri dish for mold growing next door to whoever. And so, somehow figuring out how that gets triggered. We don't want this to be costly and burdensome to the city, but we do want some sort of a stepped plan to, I guess, get the attention of vacant property owners to say, you got to take care of it, it's going to cost you.
Oops, currently we do have a escalation fee for re-inspections, but we have to start it over each year. Right now, we currently start it each year. So first time you're there, second time there, it's doubled. Third time, it gets up to close to $400 per time, and then there's a minimum fee for the mowing also. So, but that's like with the mowing, we can just do that. But for some of the items, it's just the re-inspection fee. But we would have to go to court right now. I think, Mark, is that right, to actually fix the problem?
That's correct. In municipal court, a citation could be written and a forfeiture requested, and that's the extent of the relief that a municipal court can grant. If the city wanted the authority to remove the defective condition and assess it against the property, then it needs to obtain an order from the circuit court, allowing that kind of what's called equitable relief. Otherwise, yes, as Howie's indicated, there's a reinspection fee for ordinance for property conditions that need to be corrected, whether they're a building code issue or something else. And so that tiered system already does exist to some extent. I don't know that I don't recall if it's a tiered system regarding the mowing or not yet, but.
No, the mowing is a fee, but the reinspection each time is the tier system. So
yeah, okay.
we get a reinspection and a mowing fee.
And
okay.
Are those dollars routinely being collected? Are people paying them?
Those fees go on the property tax.
So they do go on the property tax. Okay. So they're in default if they're not paying the full amount, including those fees.
Right, for the reinspection and for the mowing. That's the same as for snow removal.
Okay.
There are a couple there's at least one or two properties in the city in which they haven't paid those fees and they're multiple years delinquent. So the city's still waiting to recoup some of those dollars.
Yes. Yes, and it's certainly a possibility that they won't if for instance, there's a mortgage on the property and it's foreclosed upon, which has happened. So there's a limit on what the city can do.
Also, that we need to be aware that any unoccupied building after a certain amount of time becomes infested with rodents. It just happened. I've been in a couple cities where they've had to actually go in and exterminate rodents in these abandoned properties. There's one just down the road from me. I consider it abandoned. There's nobody been living in that house since I moved here 10 years ago. And in my opinion, when you invite rodents, you create a hazard for the neighboring property.
Linda, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I know, Al, you mentioned that some of these things could be taken, we could also put into our nuisance ordinance, but my question to Mark is, which one has more teeth?
Well, regardless of whether it's in the nuisance ordinance or in a property condition ordinance more generally, you still have the same enforcement issue that Howie had indicated before, and that there's a limit of what you can do in municipal court. The code enforcement officer can issue citations all year, and all you can get is a forfeiture. You can't get any order requiring the property owner to do anything. You would, in order to enforce any ordinance, obtain an order requiring a property owner to do anything called equitable relief, you need to go to circuit court, and that costs money. And so whenever the city is contemplating doing that, it always comes back to the common council for authority, because whether it's under any ordinance, even though technically probably under the nuisance ordinance, the mayor could just order that it go to circuit court. That's not been the practice. It's always come to the council because of the cost involved.
So what you're looking for is just direction for staff to draft something?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this conversation has kind of illuminated, at least a couple of topics, which I knew had already existed. And the general feeling I get is, what options are available to the city in order to help mitigate dilapidated properties in a more expeditious fashion? And is there a way that we can further motivate property owners to do that on their own accord? And, the challenge that we have, which has been outlined here, is that, some folks are just recalcitrant. They don't have any investment in the property. They don't have a mortgage. They may or may not even be paying their taxes. And, once you get to that state, collection collection becomes an issue, or recouping our costs become an issue. And even in my time here, there's been several properties that we've even gone through the court injunction process and, remedied those situations, but have never been able to recuperate our costs. So the city kind of just loses out on whatever that is. And, for some folks, that's better than nothing. And I get that,
So is there a motion?
I'll make it. I would, whatever you want it worded. Let's see.
Well, I guess the question too is, do you want staff to do anything? Right?
Yeah, I think that's the question yeah, I don't mean to kind of like, it's been a long meeting.
Yeah.
What do you want us to do? I don't know how to say it any more than that.
Well, I think to look into, that you talked about a tiered support or a way to deal with something, and you've looked at other policies, but what's going to work best for Milton, and to bring back a proposal.
Yeah, I think revisiting our nuisance ordinances is perhaps one approach. Are the standards that we have in our nuisance ordinances applicable by today's standards? Yeah. And if not, are there areas that can be modified, changed, or adjusted that maybe necessarily are not at a standard that we agree today?
Well, and do you want to have CDA look at this and do the work?
Marcus is looking for.
Mark, is our time up? Is the Zoom meeting going to expire?
You watch it, Mark.
I might expire.
Yeah, all of us. Just hanging on a thread here.
What I would suggest is a motion similar to the following would be a motion to direct staff to investigate better enforcement mechanisms to address property condition issues.
Mark took the words right out of my mouth.
Is that your motion, Teresa?
Yes.
All right. Everybody's seconding that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Linda seconded it, Inga. Okay. And so did Bill, if you want another one. All right.
I don't care what anybody says. Mark just earned his keep tonight.
15 minutes and come back so we can work on strategic planning for an hour or two.
We had kind of talked about it, Al and I, today. We anticipated that this was probably going to be a long meeting, and we were thinking that we'd maybe schedule a special meeting to just handle this piece.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that if we could just have council look at the proposal, the process that's proposed, and then be prepared to work on this, at another meeting, either a special meeting. And I think we're probably just going to have to do a special meeting because we just have so much going on to talk about that, the meetings get a little bit longer.
Well,
so is there a motion to delay
Table.
another meeting?
Table.
Mark, go ahead.
Motion to table to a special meeting.
Sure.
Yes, I will say that.
Teresa said it. Devin seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
And to not lose sight of this.
Right.
If we are excuse me, fortunate that this is a 5-week month.
Yeah.
Would folks be opposed to having a meeting next Tuesday?
No, let's go ahead.
As to not push this off?
Right.
That's
So
fine.
get it.
What time?
A special meeting next week, Tuesday at 6 o'clock to discuss with the only intention is to discuss strategic plan?
Yes, if you promise that that is the only thing on the agenda.
You're going to have to get Dan to promise that. He's always the one who wants to throw things on at the last minute.
I want any requests for agenda items to go directly through me, and I can just have an automatic reply, no.
And Dan will have to bring cookies on the way. Oops, that's right, we're not meeting in person.
So
yeah, so next Tuesday at 6, would that work for folks?
Yeah.
Is that Zoom or?
Yeah, we'll do Zoom. A couple weeks ago, I did send out a copy of the project charter with a chapter from a book. So if you want to take a little bit of time and read that too, then we can kind of be on the same page when we start the conversation of developing the mission, vision, and values.
Yeah, so if you don't do your homework, it just means we're going to have another 3-hour meeting next Tuesday. So I want everybody to do their homework.
Good.
Nice whole progress.
Is there any, okay, there better not be any general items. Committee reports.
Just quick for Parks and Recreation Commission, we had a meeting last night. There's going to be an Eagle Scout. He's 13. He's going to be building some dog park playground pieces for the dogs to play on. So expect to see that in the dog park in the spring because they're going to be working on it during the winter. He already has the fundraising done. He's good to go. So.
And as folks have maybe saw, we just adopted a dog this last weekend.
I saw that. Oh, good for you.
So this Eagle is now our hero.
Well, we'll be sure to introduce you. Just one more quick thing with the Parks and Recreation Commission. We are pushing forward with the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. We talked about some different community engagement pieces with that. So we'll be working on implementing it as well.
Any other committees? Okay. Staff reports. Dan.
The Fire Commission met last week? Yeah, last week. And they voted on, I know 4 out of the 6 of you were there, but they wanted to have a joint meeting with the town on Wednesday, August 19th at 6 p.m. So I don't know, I think it was just Devin and Ryan that weren't at the meeting. So if you want to mark that one down, I'm guessing that'll probably be a Zoom meeting based on how things are going. Then the Fire Commission's also having a special meeting on Thursday of next week in which Ernie and I will be presenting what the 2 options that were laid out, what that cost could look like for each municipality.
What's the date on that meeting? Thursday, July what?
The 30th.
Yeah.
At 7.
By Zoom.
Yep.
The Wednesday one was at 6?
August 19th.
At 6 p.m., right?
Yeah, at 6.
And that's a joint meeting.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're all required to attend that one.
There'll be invites for Zoom, correct? From
Yeah, links will be sent.
Thank you.
Howard, anything?
Just, Mark knows, so just the Elizabeth Street project and otherwise just regular stuff.
We like normal. We like regular. Marky Mark?
Yeah, just paving on Elizabeth here, hopefully later this week. The weather cooperates.
Ashley? I can't read lips.
We can't hear you.
Nothing? Can you hear us though? Okay, that's the most important thing.
Well, here, I'll give Ashley's report. The library's doing amazing work. They have about 30 people coming in daily to the library. And they just posted for a position, the tween and technology assistant. So if anyone, spread the word that job posting's out. Did I get
And there's
everything?
chicken videos.
Yes.
I think that had undue influence on the council. I don't know. The library is driving policy. Scott?
I got nothing to follow chicken videos with, so I'm just going to say no report.
And pollinator gardens are blooming. So, okay. Did I miss anybody for staff? Al?
No, I will just say that, there's been a lot of discussions and work underway from a community-wide aspect that, Anissa has been, very much involved in, to a level that we haven't had in my 6 years here. We have a meeting later this week with Danny and John and Rich Dahman from the school district to talk about community mask initiatives. We met with Danny and John earlier this week to talk about downtown properties. So a lot of bad stuff has come from COVID, but there are some good things. And the fact that it's really has brought us closer together as a community in terms of our conversations with the chamber, our conversations with the school district, because we really all do need each other to get through this. And, I know it sounds so cliche that we are all in this together, but we are all in this together. And it really has provided us an opportunity to work more closely, tackle some initiatives, talk more, lean on each other more. And it's been, that is definitely one good thing that's come from this. And, we're, everybody wants the best, what's best for Milton. That's just becomes abundantly clear when we start having these conversations on a more regular basis. And it's been great. It's unfortunate that all of this is happening around us, but that is definitely a pro that has come from this.
Yep. We're working hard. So we were going to do strategic planning for team building, but I also have this nice concert that I think Scott will particularly enjoy, and I really, really hope. I just love this. I even listened to it again before the meeting because it's so beautiful. It is a virtual choir of over 17,000 people. And some of you probably already saw this over the weekend. The director has been doing these virtual concerts and then having them choreographed digitally. And so this is the largest one. So Inga is going to share this. I think it's a very nice closing to our meeting. Try to stay awake because it's really soothing.
Can everyone see a blank screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Hang on, there should be sound.
There was.
There was? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sound.
Okay.
May
don't
Yeah,
have
we
to
can.
watch. So, did you get the gist of it, or was it a little bit choppy?
Yeah, let me just weigh in here. I am a choral musician, so Julie's actually really mad at me that I didn't participate in this, and I'll try to do the next one. If you watch the whole video and notice all the pictures coming together, that I forget the name of it, but what Whitaker was trying to portray was a repair that's done in Japanese culture to when you break a piece of china, you don't throw it away. You use things to then repair it and continue to use it. So I thought that was a really great sort of sidelight at the video part of it that I wanted y'all to know about too.
So when he put this together, when he put the call out for this, they listen to every recording that is sent. So they listen to more than 17,000 individual recordings, and then they narrow it down to the ones that are essentially the best, and then use technology to sync them. And I don't know how many hours and days it takes to do that.
Again, if you're interested, CBS this morning, the Sunday morning show on CBS did a segment on the whole thing, and it's pretty cool.
So Inga can send you the link by email so you can listen to it on your phone or on your computer at home. I mean, it's really beautiful. So you don't even have to do any thinking.
This doesn't do it justice. Really spend some time with this in a quiet space because it's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you can listen to this.
There's the pottery thing that Scott was talking about.
Yeah.
They often use precious metals, golds, and things like that. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, please do send us the link, Inga. Thank you.
I will do it right now.
Your homework is to listen to this and then to review your strategic planning stuff in a very calm, contemplative mood. That's the mood we're going for.
Right.
But so did we just sign everybody up for virtual learning? Is that what we just did?
We did. Welcome to my school.
Right.
Teresa, will you be the principal?
Yeah, right.
Let's make Marky Mark, the newest guy, be the vice principal. Discipline.
There you go.
That'll be our next team building. If you were in a school, If you were in a school, what role would you be? Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that.
The class clown, that would be me.
Yeah. I think a few of you would be.
Meeting, it sounds like, is actually it's going to be strategic planning next Tuesday at 6 p.m. and then a full council meeting August 4th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for staying with us for 3 hours. Hi. Hi, everybody's kids. Where's all the pets? Where's the babies? Come on.
Bring them all in. Have a nice night, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Bye.
See you next